Hello, my name is Anthony and I am reading directly from my book Pseudo Stars, and the story is called Don't Bring Me Down, which of course is the title from a Beatles song, but I thought it was really appropriate in this case, and you'll discover why as we get into the story. Stick with me afterwards and I will give you some background into the genesis of the story. Don't Bring Me Down. The river eased up over the bridge like cling film, the road still visible beneath, but not for long. The water was a mucky brown like beef soup, fast flowing, carrying leaves, branches and the remnants of parks, bins and the yards of those who lived within range of the overrun. Around 8 people stood at the mouth of the bridge, 3 of them adults. A man was telling the children not to get close, as they were too young to remember the previous flood, some 14 years gone, where a mother and her 11-year-old son had drowned. While it hadn't rained all morning, the downpour during the night ensured that the level was still rising. He knew it not to be underestimated. A car was coming down the slight incline towards them. A small white Mitsubishi, a lone woman inside, clearly determined to brace the crossing. The man in his 30s shook his head, his face a mass of silent outrage. He manoeuvred into her intended path. She made it clear, though going slow, that she was not stopping for a chat.
Hey, don't do it,
he dictated with authority born of understanding. Yet she rolled past, her window down, her hair big and recently attended to, perhaps that very morning. She was in her 50s, and though he had seen her before, did not know her name. He did know that she was not around during the 1999 disaster. Yet wisdom is not synonymous with experience, and perhaps it wouldn't have mattered if she had been around then.
Stupid woman,
he shouted, ensuring she would hear. The other adults and children gazed in disillusionment as her wheels quickly disappeared beneath the surface. He shook his head and heard her reply, quite garishly, such as husband or home or something, but the dull groan of the river removed her full comment.
She's not going to make it.
The children looked to him. One of them was his 9-year-old son. His dad knew what he was talking about. She might, said another man, though much younger, who some might class as a boy, the local apprentice plumber. The bridge was not long, but, under the conditions, had never seemed longer. It wasn't particularly wide, enough for a car in both directions, and a footpath to one side, which was protected from the road by an iron fence.
If it was a four-wheel drive, maybe,
the man stated.
The river's coming up fast. The engine's too low. It's going to stall. Any idiot can see that.
It was a perverse festival, a controlled reality program without the cameras. On the opposing side of the bridge stood a man and his wife, long-term residents who could determine what was unfolding. The water was relentless. The car slackened over the course of several meters. Then it quit altogether.
What did I tell ya? Total moron.
The young man did not like being wrong, yet managed a half smirk. The 9-year-old was filled with pride. He never doubted that his dad was right. The woman's hand emerged from the car window, beckoning.
Is she royalty?
The man said. The kids chuckled. The younger man waved to her in mockery. Hi, Your Highness. The children laughed again. The man accentuated his groan. He turned to the other.
You'd better help me.
It's her own dumb fault. Let her work it out. The man took his shoes off.
Come on, we can do this, but we better go now.
There was the briefest of debates. Also concern from the man's son. The risk factor was also reinforced by the only other adult there, a woman, known to the man's family. The man knew all of this, of course, but the emergency services would be busy, as numerous houses and farms in the area were already engulfed. There simply wasn't time. The man felt partially responsible too. Perhaps there was also a sliver of ego that wanted his son to lay witness to a heroic deed, a tale for decades to come. The young man reluctantly followed, but was already some meters behind. It was evident that the water was still rising. It was up around their thighs. He could see the woman half hanging out of her window, the water not far below. It signified that the water was already inside her car and up to the hips of the man in front. He wondered if the bridge was sagging. He had a horrible feeling that it was about to break in two, like the Titanic. He looked behind him, aware of the worry in the faces staring back. This was no longer a game, and never had been. He realized that he had not appreciated the severity of the situation. He was jeopardizing his life for a dickhead. It might be wiser to turn back. He clocked the older man's kid. There was a mixture of excitement, the expectation of the unknown, and worry in his face. The young man was committed. Besides, the town expected real men, and he did not want to be labelled a pussy. The father was close upon the car, though it was clear he had to use all his strength to remain upright. The pedestrian fence might protect them from being swept away if they were to fall, but it was only chest high and could not be relied upon for much longer. The woman reached out to him. She wasn't crying, yet was agitated and in danger of making a decision in haste. He signalled for her not to move. At that moment, the young man swore he saw the car move sideways, just a fraction. He paused, unsure what to do, peering back again to see the woman with the children on her phone, hopefully calling the right people. Yet something was happening now, not in 10 or even 5 minutes. When he turned back, he noticed that the car had moved again. No denying it now. This time, it wasn't stopping. The water had picked it up as though a bath toy. The woman literally dove out the window. The man bent forward to grab her, slipped, and went under. He shot up again, somehow taking control of the woman, but both were swept against the car, which in turn slammed into the fence. The wire held for the time being, but the water pushed up and over them like a fountain. They spluttered, turning their faces from it, struggling to keep their mouths clear, not helped by the woman's hysteria. The young man thought it best to return. He was scared. It was increasingly arduous simply to remain fixed. He was forced to lean into the water to prevent from being overcome. What the hell had he been thinking? There was nothing he could do anyway. As he turned, he saw an immense clump of river junk, the size of half a dozen people, coming directly at him. Sticks, branches, and leaves had coalesced together. Instinctively, he placed his hands out in a futile gesture to the indiscriminate debris, lost his balance, and went under. He felt the drag and was a part of it. He took water into his mouth, clawing desperately towards the light, just as he slammed into the fence. The forces of nature flipped him over it, slinging him into the malevolent, impervious, downstream swell. Don't Bring Me Down. The title obviously coming from that Beatles song, but also it's a suggestion here that the woman was the one who brought down the others, and also there's a metaphor there too for being brought down literally by dragging them into the water. In a lot of floods, as you've probably seen on the news or read about, people take stupid risks and drive into floods. So that's obviously where the story came from. In this case, I quite like messing around with irony, and the woman's actions actually caused the death of someone else, someone who was young and innocent and really was quite ignorant of the danger they were getting themselves into. So, I wanted to highlight that even though the man had brought himself into it, the older man, the young man was the one who suffered, the innocent one. It happens quite often, and it's pretty horrifying when it does happen. The bridge I based on a bridge of a small town that I grew up on, and it does have a lane each way and a pedestrian walkway down the side, and I could just sort of imagine that huge river just pouring over that bridge and taking anything with it. I wanted to do mess around with a bit of irony and bring about the folly of human nature. That's something that interests me and is in a lot of my stories. Anyway, that story is in Pseudo Stars, my story collection. There's quite a few stories in there of all different genres, and you can find that at anthonyjlangfordbooks.com. I hope you enjoyed the story, and thank you very much for listening. Cheers.